Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to be working on my Northern Bog Forest. This forest is a mixture of Black Spruce and native larch trees. The last time I worked on this forest, I stripped all the moss off the surface of the soil. It was getting really thick and it was full of liverwort and weeds. And yeah, it was just getting a bit out of control. So I thought it would be easier just to start all over, plant new moss. So this morning, there was a few weeds growing up in the soil. I picked those out. And the second thing you'll notice is this larch back here. It finally died. It had no bark on the lower part of the tree. So I knew its days were numbered. I was hoping there was a live vein at the back, but there wasn't. So this winter, it died. So I'll have to pull that out and replace it with another larch tree. And I'll be looking at the whole forest to see if I need to add any trees or move trees around. It's kind of a little late to be planting larches. They're already coming out into needle. But it's a good time for the spruce. You can see the buds are just starting to show green on the spruce. I'll also be pruning up the trees today, just kind of trimming them back. Especially the larch. I can see where the new growth is coming and I can make them, that tight, compact, conical shape. So I have a selection of trees that Jason gave to me at the last KW Bonsai meeting. I'll show you those. So here are the new trees. These are Black Spruce seedlings out front, and in the back are some larch seedlings. I think there's 4 larch, and 3 spruce. So if I want to add any trees to this forest, I can. And I would like to. One thing I notice about this forest is that in a forest, to create forest perspective, you want your forest planted more sparsely at the front. And then as you go back in the forest, you want it to get denser and denser. And that creates the illusion of trees in the distance. They're closer together. The trees are smaller because they're further away. And they're more tightly planted. And that gives the illusion that it's going off to infinity. So if I look from the front of this forest, there's a lot of space. I can look through the forest. Ideally, I would like a backdrop of trees so you can't really see through the forest. That your view behind the forest is obscured by trees. You can never get that totally. You would need a forest that goes back way far back to get that total blockage of the background. But I think I could definitely plant some more trees in between the trees, the spruce trees I have in the back row here. I think it's a little sparsely planted. So that's one thing I could do with the new trees here. I tell people that forests are a lot of work. There's always a lot of maintenance you can do throughout the growing season. Trimming your trees, keeping your moss and landscape looking good. There's always work you can do in a forest. But I find it really fun work. I really enjoy working on these forest landscapes. I'm going to begin the work today by pruning up this larch that's out front. So my goal is to get that tight conical shape to it. So you can see on this branch I have new shoots that have emerged back on the branch back here. And then I've got a tip bud here, so I can take the tip off, shortening that branch, tightening up the conical shape. This branch coming out front, I've got a shoot here, I've got one back here, so I can take off the tip of this branch. And I always leave this operation until spring because, sometimes you get dieback on these larches and you don't want to be pruning back to dead buds. So it's always wise to let them come out into needles before you begin your pruning. So I've got a branch sticking straight out the front here. I have a shoot way back on it, so I'm going to take it back to that shoot. Ideally, you want it dividing from 1 to 2, but I'm just going back to 1 shoot here because I want to keep my apex here really tight and conical if possible. So you can see this branch here I've got growth kind of crossing the trunk line here. I'm going to remove that. That's gone. Then I've got, out of this branch, I have several branches coming off of it. I've got this vertical one, horizontal one, and this one that I've pruned already. I could definitely take the horizontal one back. And the vertical one, I have a shoot up here, so I can take the tip off. And I wonder if I should go back further. I've got a shoot over here, one at the bottom and one here. Tough choice. I'll leave it for now. I don't want to get too aggressive with the pruning. Here's a branch here. I can take it back. And I'm keeping in mind my conical form. So this is a little too far out of the conical form. This one's a little close, so I'd rather be close than too far out of the conical form. You can see this one is also too far out of the conical form. As I go down, here's a branch shooting straight upwards. I can take that off. I've got some horizontal branches down lower. There's a bud sticking straight up here I can remove. One growing inside to the tree there, back to the tree that I'm removing. This one is a little far out of the conical form, so I'll trim this lower one back. This one's kind of getting a little vertical. I'll take that back. I can take this tip off here. Okay. So this is just like little detail pruning. Up in the apex here, I've got a tip I can take off here to make it more compact. Like that. I can take, there's a shoot going vertical here I could remove, or keep that and remove this part. Tough choice. I do want to grow one branch as kind of replacing this dead apex, eventually growing it up. I don't want it like a crown here. So I'll keep this one. Probably. I may change my mind in the future on that. I'm not sure. Yeah, so I think, you know, there's more pruning work to be done on this, but I'm going to wait until it gains a little more vigor. Maybe I could take this shoot off here. It's getting a little long. And the one out the back here. It's also important to keep that tight conical shape because you don't want the branches growing out and interfering with the trees beside it. You can see on the spruce here behind, I've lost some of the lower branches over the winter. And I think that's just because as these larch grew in, it kind of shaded them out and they weren't getting quite enough light and they just lost vigor. Which, you know, happens in a natural forest. There's one lower branch that did survive down here. Yeah, these forests evolve, you know, as branches don't get enough light, they weaken and they die off, and it's just part of, you know, growing a forest that there's natural selection in the forest, in real forests, in full-size forests, and in your bonsai forest. You're going to get that where there is natural selection. So the next tree I'm going to prune up is this other larch that's out front, and it's really growing strongly. So here's this larch out front. You can see all the branches, how much density it has. It's quite incredible, actually. So I'll start here. There's a vertical shoot I can prune away. Here's one that's sticking out of the profile. I can prune that back. This one also. Here I can prune this one back. Trying to tighten up that conical shape. Always trying to push it in because It's easy to grow a tree wider. You just let it grow. But it's very difficult keeping it tight and compact. You have to rely on back buds and really good health and getting light to all the branches. So this one up here is getting a little long. I have a choice. I can prune it to this vertical bud or the horizontal. I think I'll go to the horizontal. Vertical one's kind of pointing in at the tree. There's one at the back here. I can prune that one back. Up here in the apex, I got lots of shoots back here, so I can prune this one back. I've got, some good vertical growth here, and I have a branch out the back that's getting too long, so I'll take that back. As far as this side, I'm a little long here on this branch. I can't shorten it much, but I don't know. I can't really shorten that much. Yeah. If I take it back, I've got like this vertical shoot here and nothing else. So, and there's no point pruning one of these back and leaving one, because I don't know, maybe I should. I don't want it to gain too much vigor. This one's slightly shorter than this one, so I'll take one of them out just to keep vigor out of the apex. Otherwise they get too strong. There's a vertical shoot here I'll take out. It's a bit of thinning. Just always looking at the branches. I'll take this one out, thin it out a bit. There's one growing up here. I'll thin this out a bit. This one can get pruned back. This one can get pruned back. There's one at the back here that's getting pretty tall. Prune it back to horizontal bud, maybe even further. There's a branch at the back I can prune shorter. Now my base is quite wide down here, so I'm just looking to make that a little more compact, if possible. You can only do so much. You just gotta work with what the tree gives you. This one, I'll take this apical bud off. It's sticking straight out the front. And this one. Yeah, so that's roughly got that tree pruned up. As I said, as these shoots grow, you'll notice more areas or opportunities where you can prune them. But it's certainly got them trimmed up. You can see this tree's quite a nice conical shape. And it's very dense with branches. I'll switch to pruning a spruce now, so I'll go around the back. And you can see that's where the spruce hang out. And I'll show you what you can do at this stage. The buds are just starting to show green, so they're swelling. So you know what buds are alive and what sections of the branches are dead. Like here on this branch, there's a brown section where it died, the tip of it, so I'll just prune that away. So I get light to the branches that are living. Another dead branch here I can prune away. And you'll find, when you're trying to keep the trees tight and conical, that you're going to get some dieback, because, some of this pruning is fairly risky. Trying to keep them tight, you're pruning into like branches that have no visible buds, and sometimes the branches find a bud to grow and sometimes they don't, they just die off. So yeah, it's difficult.
It's easier to maintain the size once you get it to where you want it. But getting them pruned back initially to a tight conical shape, it was a little risky, and I'm sure maybe some of the branches I've lost are because I took some chances on those branches. But, you know, every year, you know, you get a little better, or it gets a little easier to manage the growth. You're just looking for back buds, pruning back to them, doing bud selection. A lot of these places, like at this branch tip here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 buds in one section. That would just explode in growth if I left them all on. So yeah, so all you can do at about this stage is, if you see buds further back on the branch, you can prune back to those living buds. And if you see cluster of buds, you can thin them out. So I'll show you this example up here. So here's that branch with all the buds. So you see, it's just a cluster. It looks like a cluster of grapes or something. So I need to pick what I want to grow and what I need to prune off. So I certainly don't want these vertical ones, so I'll get rid of those. Don't want branches sticking straight up. There's another one here that can go. So this leaves me one here. I'll get rid of this one here. So that leaves me one bud here, one over here, one here. There's a bud here growing back towards the tree. I can get rid of that. Like that. So that kind of cleans that branch up. And again, once this starts growing in, I'll revisit the area, thinning it out as shoots extend if I need to. You can see there's some back budding close to the trunk here, which is always good. It's nice to get, you know, your growth even more compact. Yeah, so I don't see, you know, a lot of branches I can prune back to buds. I think I'd better wait until these buds develop more before I prune the branch tips back. Yeah, so another probably a week, and then I'll be ready to prune these a little bit more. While I've got the planting turned around, this is the back of the planting, you can see I have space here to plant trees. So I've got 3 black spruce, and the idea of this forest is the black spruce go on the backdrop, and they provide a green backdrop for the larch. When the larch turn colors in fall, they get the bright yellow needles. So you have the bright yellow needles with the contrasting dark green black background. That's the idea of this forest. So I need to plant more spruce back here to fill in this forest. And I said I wanted, you know, the trees in the distance to be smaller, so I'll have to prune off the tops of these to keep them a little smaller. But I definitely have space in this forest to plant more trees, which is kind of exciting. So I can definitely fit in one here, maybe it's possible even 3 there if I have them spaced out. I would like, there's that dead larch, I'll pull that out. I'd like to put another larch in there, and maybe, I don't know if I can fit more spruce in here, but that would be nice. Maybe they'll have to go, you know, more forward here. Now I only have 3 spruce, so maybe 2 back here and 1 up here. So let me pull that larch out. It's like dead, unfortunately. Yeah. You can see the roots were alive on it, but there's just no connecting tissue up to the top of the tree. And these are the ones the rabbits ringed. Yeah, there's no live vein on it at all. It's too bad. But the roots were still alive, but yeah, it doesn't help the top of the tree. I'm looking at the forest from the front, and you can see in this area here, there's space. You're looking back through the trees. It's not very dense in that section of the forest. This area here is quite nice. It's very dense. You can't see back there too much. Yeah, so I think I need more trees. So I could at least put a spruce here, and as I said, I want the larch in the foreground, the spruce in the background. So maybe definitely one spruce in there for sure, and maybe a larch. I'll see if I can fit two in that area. I've got this spruce. I don't know if it's one tree or two, but it's like a double trunk. That would look really good. That would help fill in space back there. So I'll get the roots combed out and get this planted. All right, I'll get the roots combed out. I'll see if this is two trees in here growing side by side, or if it's a twin trunk joined together. So now I'm looking at that tree, trying it out. Different places. You can see how different it looks from the trees that are already underway as bonsai. Yeah. I think I'd want it somewhere like that. And I'm going to prune the height. You can see I've got a whole bunch of buds here, so I'm going to prune the height down like that on that tree. This other tree, I've also got a whole bunch of buds there, so I'll prune the height down to here. And then you can see on these branches the closest buds are way out here, so I can't really prune them back, or those branches would probably die off. So that's going to be kind of a long-term thing, chasing buds back. So I think that's ready for planting. I like it just sort of in between those two back trees. I've got my thicker trunk forward, my smaller one slightly behind. So I think I'll plant it there. Yeah, all I can do in these upper branches, as you can see, there's buds here. I can take the tips off the branches back to the closest buds towards the trunk line. That's about all I can do for now. So I will do that in these upper branches. And hopefully, you know, the tree has lots of vigor, and that'll stimulate a bit of back budding. And eventually, I'll get a compact tree up there. So I'm going to dig out a pocket to plant the tree in here. And I have to be very careful because there is roots in this soil from the other surrounding trees. So I've got to be careful when I rake, not to start ripping through roots and doing too much damage to them. I don't see any active root growth on the roots on the spruce in this forest yet. These trees were overwintered in the poly house over winter. So they're kind of a little later than some of the larch and the spruce in the greenhouse here. Okay, I think that's it. I've got my pocket of soil. And next, I think I'd better prune off some of these long roots. Otherwise, I'll never fit them in that pocket of soil. Yeah, that's pretty good. Get that tree planted right here. I have to make sure it's vertical. That's one thing about these northern bog forests, is that every tree is vertical. They shoot up like arrows. Okay, well, there's the start of another tree in the forest. I'm going to give that a water just to make sure it's settled in. All right, here I go with the water. Next, I've got to plan where a larch is going to go. I think originally I had like a curved pathway kind of going back. And it's nice to have some open space in the forest, but this is too much. So, a larch, I got 4 larch. A larch would look good in there. And again, you can see the difference between a larch seedling and one that's has some training as a bonsai. It's quite dramatic. I could possibly fit 2 larch in here. Hopefully they got lots of vigor. You can see the roots are starting to get active on the larch. That's why it's a little late to be repotting them. If they were totally dormant, now there are a lot of roots in here that are totally dormant, so now I would say there's more dormant roots. Like the active tips, there's 1 here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8. Out of all the roots in this pot, 8 growing tips. So I don't think I'm too late. There's probably, 100 growing tips in here that are still inactive. And it's always the tips that start to grow near the outside of the pot because they get the warmth. The ones in the interior stay colder and they stay dormant longer. So I think I'm okay. I am going to prune this larch up a bit. There's a dead leader on the top here, which isn't the worst in the world. I'll just prune the tips back a bit, just making them a little more compact in the apex. That'll also ease the load on the roots a bit. I've got this larch pruned up now to, a bit of a conical form. So I'll go outside, I'll comb out the roots and get it ready to plant in the forest. I just wanted to show you, here's the root system on the larch. I haven't done any pruning. So you can see the only growing tips are those ones I saw, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. The rest of the root system is still dormant. And this is the only true way of telling whether it's too late to repot a tree or not. If this whole root system was active, then definitely don't be trimming all those new root tips off, or the tree's going to have a hard time recovering and growing. But this tree, 95% of the root system is still dormant, so it's perfectly safe to repot the tree. So I'll do a little root pruning. I'll just trim off all these long roots, including those 5 growing tips. There's one root that's kind of growing straight down that's thick. I'm going to take that off. And there might be a lot of roots attached to it, but there. So quite a severe root pruning on the larch. And we'll see if it makes it. There's no guarantee with these seedlings. Sometimes you have good luck, sometimes you don't. But if you don't try, you never find out if they're going to make it. So, where am I going to put it? I got to pick a front for the tree. I want a front that kind of looks good, shows the conical shape off. It's got a bit of a curve in this trunk, but that'll straighten out, I think, as it gets a bit older. Let's have a look down low and just position this tree. Okay. So right where I have it is in between these 2 trees, and that helps fill in the forest. I'm wondering if it's too close to this larch. it's not a problem now, but as these bottom branches get longer and I get a more conical shape, it might be a problem. So I'm thinking maybe even rotating it around so the bare part of the trunk line is against the other trees. I think that would be better. It's kind of coming towards me too. If I rotate it just a bit, it straightens that trunk out. So that would look quite good there. I think that's where I'll plant it. Okay, so there's where my tree's going. I've got to keep the front to the front, and it's going in right here. So there's some more roots from some of these adjacent trees. You can see they're still dormant too. And eventually, you know, these, I don't think I'll ever separate these trees again. It'll all just be planted as one big tree, the whole forest. It would be quite a bit of work to separate all the trees and root prune them. A lot of work. And, you know, just left by themselves, they'll grow roots all throughout the soil. Here's a look at the forest now from the front. So, yeah, that definitely densifies that area. It looks really good, and once those trees kind of match the style of the others, it'll look much better. Now I need to plant that space at the back there. I'm looking through here and I see background, so I need to put the trees back there. So I've got 2 more black spruce, so I'll put those behind, and then I've got 3 more larch, and I don't need to plant all of them, but I could. We'll see. So let's go around the back and plant those black spruce. Okay, I am rotating the forest around. One of the things that inspired me to grow the trees in this style, that tight, conical, tall style, I used to subscribe, or maybe I still do, to this Ford channel from Alaska. I think it was Backyard Alaskan or something. And I used to stare at the trees in his backyard because they were like spears. They were very tight conical shapes. And I had never really seen tight conical trees like that before, and I was just fascinated by them. And then, you know, since then, my travels up north, I've seen those trees, and it's a very unique style and very localized to like the northern trees. All the northern trees are those tight conical shapes, and you don't see them down here in the south and, you know, southern Ontario. It's a northern thing. Okay, so that pocket's dug out. Yeah, the other thing I noticed about those northern trees, like the full-size ones, is that because they're a tight conical shape, there were so many trees packed together. And yeah, it's a very unique look. And I really liked it. It was like totally alien to me when I first saw it. And I thought, wow, is that ever bizarre? So that's one of the things that inspired me to create this forest with those tight conical shaped trees. That and getting out into northern Canada and seeing the trees for myself. I have got my 2 spruce kind of bare rooted, so let me do a little root pruning. Otherwise, I'll never fit them in that little pocket there. So kind of taking off the roots going directly under the tree. Taking them back, I should say, not off. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. So, next I want to plant them. So I've got to fit 2 trees in this pocket, which is going to be very tight. Something like that. They're sort of fitting in there. Yeah, that really densifies the back of the forest here. I think I'm really going to like that. So let me position them a little better, and then I'll fill them in. Okay, so these trees are planted. The soil's pressed firmly down around the roots. I've pruned up the trees at the back, the 2 new trees that I planted. I shorten the branches as much as I can. There's still a bit of interference, but until I get back buds, I can't really shorten them much more. I pruned the height to try and get that asymmetrical triangular shape to the forest. Yeah, so lots of development to come to, well, these 2 new trees and all the other trees. But it's definitely looking like a denser forest in the planting, which is something I like. I think it looks a little more realistic, I guess. Here's a look at the forest now. So it still looks quite strange without any moss on the forest floor. That's what kind of makes this planting look like a northern bog forest, is having that green carpet of moss and trails and stuff through it. And so that will come. I'll definitely be planting moss, and maybe soon.
My northern style bog forest has undergone quite a change today, getting 4 additional trees in the planting. So there's lots more work to do to the forest. I'm going to finish pruning up the larch trees today, and then we'll come back at a later date and plant all the moss. That'll be exciting. I'm not planting the moss yet because I want to see what weeds grow up in this soil and pull them out before I put the layer of moss on top. So that is it for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.